Lights blazed. Confetti cannons stood silent, waiting. The stage glittered, reflecting the expectant faces in the audience. This was Starbound, the biggest singing competition on TV. Millions tuned in every week, hoping to witness the birth of the next superstar. But behind the scenes, it was a carefully crafted show, designed for maximum drama and entertainment. The judges sat at their long, polished table, each a star in their own right. There was Marcus, the pop idol, known for his catchy tunes and even catchier smile. Next to him sat Isabella, the opera diva, with a voice that could shatter glass and a reputation for being brutally honest. And finally, there was David, the country music legend, a man of few words but immense musical wisdom. Tonight was the semifinals, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The remaining contestants, all young and stylish, paced nervously backstage, warming up their voices and practicing their winning smiles. They knew this was their chance, their shot at fame and fortune. The host, a charismatic man with a booming voice, stepped onto the stage. "Welcome back to Starbound," he announced, his voice echoing through the auditorium. "Tonight, our talented singers will battle it out for a spot in the grand finale. Let's meet our first contestant." The crowd roared with excitement. The music swelled, and the first contestant, a young man with perfectly styled hair and a dazzling smile, took the stage. He launched into a high-energy pop song, dancing and singing with practiced ease. The judges nodded along, impressed by his performance. It was exactly what they expected. But little did they know, the real surprise was yet to come. Backstage, a hush fell as the host announced the next contestant. "And now, please welcome Sarah Miller." Sarah wasn't like the other contestants. While they wore designer clothes and sparkling makeup, Sarah's dress looked like it came from a thrift store, a simple blue floral print that hung a little too loosely. Her shoes were scuffed, the heels worn down from years of walking. She wasn't young and trendy. Her face held the lines of a life lived, a stark contrast to the carefully sculpted features of the others. As she walked onto the stage, the bright lights seemed to magnify her imperfections. She clutched the microphone tightly, her knuckles white. The audience, used to the polished performances of the younger contestants, shifted in their seats, a ripple of unease spreading through the crowd. The judges exchanged glances. Marcus raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. Isabella leaned forward, her expression unreadable. David remained impassive, his eyes fixed on Sarah. Sarah reached the center of the stage, the spotlight blinding. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. This was it. This was her chance. She had to make it count. "Hello," she said softly, her voice barely audible. "My name is Sarah Miller." Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the microphone. She looked out at the sea of faces, a mix of curiosity and judgment staring back at her. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing her small town, her supportive family, the years of singing in her church choir. She opened her eyes, a newfound determination shining in them. It was time. Marcus leaned closer to Isabella, his voice a low murmur. "Well, this is a change of pace," he said, a smirk playing on his lips. "Looks like someone wandered in from a church social." Isabella chuckled, a sharp, brittle sound. "Indeed. I hope she knows where she is. This is an amateur night." David remained silent, his gaze unwavering. He had seen it all in his years in the music industry, from overnight sensations to one-hit wonders. He knew that appearances could be deceiving. The audience, picking up on the judges' condescending attitudes, began to giggle. Someone in the back row shouted, "Sing us a hymn, Grandma." The laughter rippled through the auditorium, a cruel and mocking sound. Sarah ignored them, focusing on the music director. He gave her a nod, signaling that they were ready. She took another deep breath, trying to block out the negativity. She had faced worse in her life. This was just another hurdle. She cleared her throat. "I'll be singing." "The Rose," she announced, her voice a little stronger this time. Marcus rolled his eyes. "Oh, great. A classic. Just what we need," he muttered to Isabella. Isabella stifled a yawn. "Let's just get this over with," she whispered back. "I have a facial appointment to get to." David, however, leaned forward slightly, a flicker of interest in his eyes. He had a soft spot for old ballads, the songs that told stories of love and loss, of hope and despair. He wondered if Sarah could do it justice. As the first chords of the piano began to play, one of the judges sighed and reached for the buzzer. It was going to be a long night, or so they thought. The opening piano chords of The Rose filled the auditorium, soft and gentle. Sarah closed her eyes, picturing the rolling hills of her hometown, the fields of wildflowers swaying in the breeze. She remembered her grandmother, humming this song as she tended her rose garden, her voice filled with a quiet strength. Taking a deep breath, Sarah opened her mouth and sang. The first note was a revelation. It wasn't polished or perfect, but it was raw and real, filled with a lifetime of joy and sorrow. It was a voice that had known hardship, that had weathered storms, that had emerged stronger and more beautiful than before. The sound resonated through the auditorium, silencing the laughter and the whispers. Marcus's hand froze inches from the buzzer. Isabella's bored expression vanished, replaced by a look of stunned surprise. Even David sat up a little straighter, his eyes widening slightly. Sarah's voice filled the space, each note a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. She sang of love and loss, of hope and despair, of the simple beauty that could be found even in the darkest of times. She wasn't just singing a song, she was sharing her soul. The audience was captivated. They sat in stunned silence, listening to every word, every note, every breath. The woman in the thrift store dress and scuffed heels had transformed into something extraordinary. She was no longer just Sarah Miller. She was the embodiment of the song itself, a living, breathing rose blooming in the middle of the stage. The judge with his hand on the buzzer slowly lowered it and seemed to forget it was there. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew he needed to hear more. He needed to understand this woman. As Sarah continued to sing, the lyrics of The Rose took on a new meaning. They spoke of planting seeds of hope even when surrounded by thorns, of finding love in a world that often seemed cold and unforgiving. Her voice soared, filling the auditorium with a power that belied her humble appearance. Marcus, the pop idol, found himself unexpectedly moved. He had always dismissed ballads as old-fashioned and sentimental, but Sarah's rendition was different. It was honest, authentic, and deeply affecting. He realized that true talent wasn't about hitting the right notes or having the perfect image. It was about connecting with the audience on an emotional level. Isabella, the opera diva, was equally impressed. She recognized the technical skill behind Sarah's performance, the control and precision that came from years of practice. But it was more than just technique. It was the passion and vulnerability that Sarah poured into every note. It was a reminder that true artistry came from the heart. David, the country music legend, nodded slowly, a rare smile gracing his lips. He had heard countless versions of The Rose over the years, but none had touched him quite like this. Sarah's voice was like a warm embrace, a comforting reminder that even in the face of adversity, there was always hope. By the time Sarah reached the chorus, the audience was on its feet. They clapped and cheered, their faces lit up with emotion. Some were wiping away tears. Others were simply smiling, their hearts filled with joy. The woman who had been dismissed as a church auntie had brought them all together, united by the power of her voice and the beauty of her song. The camera zoomed in on Sarah's face, capturing her radiant smile. She wasn't just performing, she was sharing a piece of herself with the world. And the world was listening. The judge who almost pressed the buzzer now sat mesmerized, completely absorbed in the performance. He felt a wave of shame wash over him as he realized how close he had come to missing this incredible moment. He knew that he would never forget Sarah Miller and her unforgettable rendition of The Rose. The final notes of the song faded away, leaving a profound silence in their wake. Sarah stood on the stage, her chest heaving slightly, her eyes closed. She had poured every ounce of her being into that performance, and now she felt drained but strangely exhilarated. The silence stretched on, broken only by the occasional sniffle from the audience. Then, slowly at first, applause began to ripple through the auditorium. It grew louder and louder, building into a thunderous ovation. People were on their feet, clapping and cheering, their faces beaming with admiration. Sarah opened her eyes, a small smile playing on her lips. She had never experienced anything like this before. She had always sung for herself, for her family, for her church choir. But now, she had sung for the world, and the world had responded with open hearts. The judges, too, were on their feet, clapping along with the audience. Marcus wiped a tear from his eye, his face flushed with emotion. Isabella gave Sarah a rare, genuine smile. David nodded approvingly, his eyes twinkling with admiration. The host rushed onto the stage, his voice filled with excitement. "Sarah Miller, what an incredible performance," he exclaimed. "You have truly touched our hearts tonight." He turned to the judges. "Judges, what did you think?" Marcus was the first to speak. "Sarah," he said, his voice choked with emotion, "that was one of the most beautiful things I have ever heard. You have a voice that can heal, that can inspire, that can change the world." Isabella nodded in agreement. "Sarah, You came onto this stage looking like an ordinary woman, but you sang like an angel. You have a gift, and you have shared it with us tonight. Thank you. David simply said, Sarah, you reminded us what music is all about. The camera zoomed in on Sarah's face as she bowed her head slightly, her smile widening. She didn't need their praise. She had known all along what she was capable of. But it was nice to be acknowledged, to be seen, to be heard. And as the applause continued to thunder through the auditorium, Sarah knew that her life would never be the same again. The woman who came in wearing a thrifted dress and scuffed heels had become a star. Backstage, the other contestants watched the monitor in stunned silence. The confident smiles they had worn just moments before were gone, replaced by looks of disbelief and envy. They had trained for years, perfecting their voices and their stage presence, but none of them possessed the raw, untamed talent that Sarah Miller had displayed. One young woman, who had been particularly dismissive of Sarah earlier in the evening, began to cry. She realized that all the fancy clothes and expensive vocal lessons in the world couldn't make up for the genuine emotion that Sarah brought to her performance. She had mistaken style for substance, and now she was paying the price. The host, still buzzing from the excitement of the performance, grabbed his phone and started scrolling through social media. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Sarah Miller's name was trending worldwide. People were sharing clips of her performance, praising her voice, her story, her authenticity. He realized that Starbound had just witnessed something truly special, something that transcended the usual manufactured drama and carefully crafted image. They had witnessed the birth of a star who had risen from obscurity to capture the hearts of millions. As Sarah walked off the stage, she was greeted by a swarm of producers, managers, and publicists, all eager to capitalize on her newfound fame. They offered her contracts, endorsements, and promises of a glamorous future. But Sarah remained calm and composed, her feet firmly planted on the ground. She knew that fame was fleeting, and that true success came from staying true to yourself. She thanked them for their offers but politely declined, telling them that she needed some time to think. She knew that her life had changed forever, but she wasn't going to let it change who she was. She was still Sarah Miller, the woman from the small town with the thrift store dress and the scuffed heels. And she was ready to share her voice with the world, on her own terms. The show was far from over, but everyone knew in their hearts that no other contestant could possibly top Sarah's performance. The semifinals had become Sarah Miller's night. The next morning, Sarah woke up to a flurry of phone calls and text messages. Her friends and family were ecstatic, showering her with congratulations and well wishes. Even her old high school principal called to say how proud he was of her. But amidst all the excitement, Sarah felt a strange sense of unease. She knew that fame could be a fickle thing, and she didn't want to get caught up in the hype. She longed for the simple life she had known before, the quiet evenings spent with her family, the Sunday mornings singing in the church choir. She decided to take a walk to clear her head. As she strolled through her small town, she noticed people staring at her, whispering to each other, pointing and smiling. She realized that she was no longer just Sarah Miller. She was Sarah Miller from Starbound, a local celebrity. She stopped by her grandmother's rose garden, the place where she had first learned to love music. She sat on the bench, closed her eyes, and listened to the gentle breeze rustling through the leaves. She remembered her grandmother's words, Sarah, your voice is a gift. Use it wisely, and never forget where you came from. Sarah opened her eyes, a newfound clarity in her gaze. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't let fame change her, but she could use her platform to make a difference in the world. She could support local charities, promote arts education in schools, and inspire others to pursue their dreams, no matter how impossible they may seem. She pulled out her phone and called her manager, the one who seemed the most genuine and trustworthy. I'm ready, she said, but I have some conditions. The manager listened patiently as Sarah outlined her vision. He was impressed by her humility, her compassion, and her unwavering commitment to her values. He knew that he was dealing with someone truly special. I'm on board, he said. Let's make some magic happen. And so, Sarah Miller embarked on her new journey, ready to use her voice not just to sing, but to make a difference. She was no longer just a contestant on a singing competition. She was a force for good, a beacon of hope, a true star. Over the next few weeks, Sarah's life became a whirlwind of interviews, concerts, and charity events. She traveled the world, sharing her music and her message of hope with millions of people. She met with world leaders, collaborated with renowned artists, and even received an honorary degree from her alma mater. But through it all, she never forgot where she came from. She made sure to visit her hometown regularly, spending time with her family and friends, singing in the church choir, and tending her grandmother's rose garden. She also made it a point to use her platform to speak out against injustice and inequality. She advocated for arts education in schools, supported local charities, and raised awareness about important social issues. Her authenticity and her unwavering commitment to her values resonated with people all over the world. She became a role model for young and old alike, inspiring them to pursue their dreams and to make a difference in the world. One day, Sarah received a letter from a young girl who had been bullied for her appearance. The girl wrote that Sarah's story had given her the courage to stand up for herself and to embrace her unique qualities. Sarah was deeply moved by the letter. She realized that her voice had the power to change lives, to inspire hope, and to create a better world. And that was all that mattered. Years later, Sarah Miller was still singing, still inspiring, and still making a difference. She had become a legend, a symbol of hope and resilience, a true star. And every time she stepped onto a stage, she remembered the woman in the thrift store dress and scuffed heels who had dared to dream, who had dared to sing, who had dared to be herself. And she smiled, knowing that anything was possible. But what about the other contestants on Starbound? Did they fade into obscurity, forgotten in the shadow of Sarah Miller's brilliance? The answer, perhaps surprisingly, is no. While none of them achieved the same level of global fame as Sarah, they all found their own paths to success. The young man who had opened the show went on to release a successful pop album, touring the world and building a devoted fan base. The young woman who had cried backstage after Sarah's performance used the experience to fuel her own artistry, developing a more authentic and heartfelt style that resonated with audiences. Starbound, despite its initial focus on manufactured drama and carefully crafted images, ultimately became a launching pad for a diverse group of talented individuals. It taught them valuable lessons about hard work, perseverance, and the importance of staying true to themselves. The judges, too, were changed by their encounter with Sarah Miller. Marcus learned to appreciate the beauty of simplicity and authenticity. Isabella discovered the power of vulnerability and emotion. And David reaffirmed his belief in the transformative power of music. Starbound continued to be a popular show, but it was never quite the same after Sarah Miller's performance. The producers realized that audiences craved authenticity and emotion, not just manufactured drama and catchy tunes. They began to focus on showcasing the unique stories and talents of the contestants, rather than trying to mold them into pre-packaged stars. And so, the legacy of Sarah Miller lived on, not just in her own music and her own activism, but also in the way that Starbound approached its mission. The woman in the thrift store dress and scuffed heels had changed the world, one song at a time. She proved that talent could come from anywhere, and that true beauty lay not in outward appearances, but in the depths of the human heart. Years later, a young girl stood backstage at Starbound, her heart pounding in her chest. It was her turn to audition, and she was terrified. She clutched her lucky charm, a small, tarnished rose pendant that had belonged to her grandmother. She had always loved to sing, but she had never had the courage to pursue her dream. She was shy and insecure, and she didn't think she was good enough. But then she had seen Sarah Miller's performance on YouTube, and it had changed her life. Sarah's story had given her the courage to believe in herself, to embrace her unique qualities, and to pursue her passion, no matter what anyone else thought. She knew that she might not win, but she also knew that she had to try. As she waited for her name to be called, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She remembered Sarah's words, "Your voice is a gift. Use it wisely, and never forget where you came from." The host announced her name, and she walked onto the stage, her legs trembling slightly. The bright lights blinded her for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. She looked out at the judges, and she saw a familiar face. It was David, the country music legend, the one judge who had seemed to understand Sarah Miller from the very beginning. She smiled, and David smiled back. She knew that she had nothing to fear. She was ready to sing her heart out, to share her story with the world, and to honor the legacy of Sarah Miller, the woman who had shown her that anything was possible. And as she began to sing, her voice filled the auditorium with a power and a beauty that surprised even herself. She was no longer just a shy, insecure girl. She was a star, shining brightly in the night. The cycle continues. The ripple effect goes on. And all it took was a woman in a thrift store dress, a classic song, and the courage to be herself. The clip of Sarah Miller's performance continued to circulate online, racking up millions of views, shares, and comments. People from all walks of life were touched by her voice, her story, and her authenticity. It was a reminder that in a world often dominated by superficiality and manufactured images, true talent and genuine emotion could still prevail. News outlets around the globe covered Sarah's story, highlighting her humble beginnings, her unwavering commitment to her values, and her transformative impact on the world. She was interviewed on talk shows, featured in magazines, and honored at award ceremonies. But amidst all the accolades and attention, Sarah remained grounded and focused on her mission. She used her platform to amplify the voices of the marginalized, to advocate for social justice, and to inspire others to make a difference. She established a foundation to support arts education in underserved communities, providing opportunities for young people to discover their talents and pursue their dreams. She organized concerts and rallies to raise awareness about important social issues, bringing people together to work towards a better world. Sarah Miller had become more than just a singer. She had become a symbol of hope, a beacon of light, a true inspiration. She had proven that one person, with one voice, could change the world. And every time she faced a challenge, every time she felt discouraged, she remembered the woman in the thrift store dress and scuffed heels who had dared to dream, who had dared to sing, who had dared to be herself. And she smiled, knowing that anything was possible. The story of Sarah Miller is a reminder that true beauty lies within, that authenticity is a superpower, and that the greatest gift we can give the world is the courage to be ourselves. So go out there, embrace your unique qualities, and let your voice be heard. You never know whose life you might change. That's how the Starbound competition changed forever. That is how the world remembered her name. That is how people learned to be true to themselves. Sarah's ballad did more than win a singing competition. It changed the world. And that, my friends, is the story of Sarah Miller. A story of unexpected talent, unwavering courage, and the transformative power of authenticity. A story that reminds us that it's never too late to pursue your dreams, that true beauty lies within, and that one voice can change the world. But more than just a story, it's a lesson. It's a roadmap. It's a challenge to each and every one of us to look beyond the surface, to embrace our unique qualities, and to let our voices be heard. So the next time you see someone who doesn't quite fit in, someone who doesn't conform to the norm, remember Sarah Miller. Remember the woman in the thrift store dress and scuffed heels who dared to dream, who dared to sing, who dared to be herself. And remember that you, too, have the power to change the world. You, too, have a voice that deserves to be heard. You, too, have a story that needs to be told. All you have to do is be yourself. Be authentic. Be brave. And let your light shine. The end. For now. Or is it? Perhaps the real story is just beginning. Perhaps you are the next Sarah Miller. Perhaps you are the one who will inspire the world with your voice, your talent, and your unwavering commitment to your values. Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the world needs your voice. The world needs your story. The world needs you. So go out there and make it happen. Be the change you want to see in the world. And never, ever, give up on your dreams. Because you never know what you might achieve. You never know whose life you might touch. You never know how far your voice might carry. The end, for real this time. Maybe. Now, imagine a world where everyone felt comfortable enough to be themselves. Not who they think they should be, or who others expect them to be, but their true, authentic selves. What would that world look like? Perhaps there would be more kindness, more understanding, more compassion. Perhaps there would be less judgment, less prejudice, less hate. Perhaps there would be more art, more music, more creativity. Perhaps the world would be a more beautiful place. And perhaps, just perhaps, we could all live a little bit more like Sarah Miller. Think about it. What's stopping you from pursuing your dreams? What's holding you back from letting your voice be heard? What's preventing you from being your true, authentic self? Is it fear? Is it insecurity? Is it the fear of judgment? If so, I urge you to let go of those fears. Embrace your imperfections. Celebrate your unique qualities. And let your light shine. The world needs your voice. The world needs your talent. The world needs you. So go out there and make it happen. Be the change you want to see in the world. And never, ever, give up on your dreams. Because you never know what you might achieve. You never know whose life you might touch. You never know how far your voice might carry. Remember the story of Sarah Miller, the woman in the thrift store dress and scuffed heels who dared to dream, who dared to sing, who dared to be herself. And let her story inspire you to do the same. The world is waiting. The stage is set. It's your turn to shine. So go out there and be the star you were always meant to be. You got this. The real journey starts with believing in you. It starts with knowing that even when people put you down, even when things get tough, you have everything you need to make a name for yourself. And Sarah knew this better than anyone. And so, the story of Sarah Miller comes to a close. But her legacy lives on, inspiring generations to come to embrace their true selves, to pursue their dreams with unwavering courage, and to use their voices to make the world a better place. Remember her name. Remember her story. And remember that you, too, have the power to change the world. Go forth and shine. The end. Really, truly, the end this time. Though. What if Sarah's story inspired you to create your own? What kind of world would you build? What kind of message would you share? It's all up to you. So take a deep breath, find your voice, and let your journey begin. Because the world is waiting to hear what you have to say. And who knows? Maybe someday, someone will be telling your story, inspiring others to follow in your footsteps. The possibilities are endless. The future is yours. Now, go make it amazing. The absolute final end. Unless. Just kidding. But seriously, go do something great. The world needs it. And you've got what it takes. Goodbye, friends. And thank you for listening. Sarah Miller's story isn't over. It's just beginning in you.